How you guys doing? Hi, John, Dartmouth, Al, Jimmy. Okay, let's see what are you guys up to. 8 o'clock here, right? It's 8 a.m. right on the button. Hi, Dominic. Glad you could make it. Okie doke. I saw that little thing about time travel for beginners, and I was thinking, we haven't had a beginners thing, so I thought, well, it'd be a good time to do that. Hey, neighbor, Michael, good to see you. So, what what would be? We haven't, like I said, we haven't done this in a long time, but what would be some advice you'd have to a beginner? Um, that you would say, okay, look, you got to if you're going to collect watches, this is what you should be aware of. Dominic, yeah, I know what you mean. I feel the same way sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, new things keep coming out. Indeed. Yeah, I tell you, there are a lot of kind of decisions. I have a feeling that there's sort of a divergent coming up in terms of what collectors may want. And so a new collector say, look, this is one way you can go, and this is another way you can go. And I think the two ways are have to do with sort of a craftsmanship and tradition versus what we might call functionality and functionality and accuracy. They're two different. I mean, in other words, for the focal point, um, is that there's in an odd way things that never go off aren't as interesting as something that you get and it's perfect all the time. Now, nobody wants something that's sort of breaking all the time. But on the other hand, having something that is interesting with that has craftsmanship. They may not be the most popular watches, but they have some of the most interesting kinds of features to them. I don't have any silicon. I would suggest patience. I find that each day I find a new watch. So I like it taking a little extra time to decide if a chronograph floats your boat or is it dress watches fly back. Yeah, Al, I agree with that. You have to have patience. Not that I'm any good example of somebody with patience, but yeah, I agree with that. There's some times I'm just sort of snooping around someplace and I see what I consider a great deal and go grab it. So much for patience, but it is a virtue. It really is. So that's a good one. The biggest challenge is to bring your wife in your hobby. There's there's this it's sort of that I agree with that. But by the way, John, getting your wife involved, there are different ways to do that. Um, I do it with if I come back from New York with a new watch, I'll also come back with a little blue box with a white bow. That's one way. Um, my wife and I go to like the events, the New York Gala, the uh, watch time, and one of the most fun that we went to last year was the party that Agenhor had after the GPHD awards. That was a lot of fun. So I mean, but for the most part, I don't know. That I'm more likely to be accused of spending more time with interest in my watches and listening to interesting things that my wife has to say. Anyway, John. Hi, Jose. How you doing? Fernie, good to see you. Traditional and established construction last is reliable, easy to get serviced. Yeah, that becomes a tough thing. Now, oh Jesus, I I hate to keep harping on the sort of the silicon split, but it seems to be something that more and more people tend to recognize and are saying, wait a minute, that's not what I got into watch collection for. On the other hand, some says, I like to collect watches, but I also like a very reliable watch. And um, so that can be a tricky one. Yeah, Michael, that's a great example. I mean, a great thing to do is have separate accounts. Yeah, and have a family lawyer on quick dial too. Yeah, suggest the price. Jimmy, that is so true. Some people say, well, gee, I think that's, it's not polite to, I'll suggest one if they don't even have it. Um, there's, I don't know. The whole business part of watch collection is like a separate story. And on the one hand, there's I could not ever fault somebody who finds a certain brand of watch with an inexpensive movement in it that they really enjoy. Okay. Tag Heuer, I don't they have these numbers for the watch movement, but they're all ETA or Salida movements now. And the thing about that is that they really enjoy it. The oil company Monaco. I love that watch. And but it wouldn't be one that I would save up for, or I mean, if something came along, maybe that'd be fun to have that for a great price. But that's something I think that you have to find, I think, the kind of watch, and also the kind of watch collectors that are sort of like, yeah, we're thinking along the same lines. And so you can have sort of a mutual supporting system. I think that's good. Um, I I have a thing. I was thinking for the video that I've got coming out on Monday. It's going to be some watches for cheeky watch collectors. I just thought, people, I don't care what anybody thinks, this is what I'm getting. That might be fun. Hey, JGH, how you doing? 911, good to see you. When buying a watch, remember to include the cost of maintaining the watch over time. That's good advice and one that I never follow. Okay, now I'm not saying that that's off, but I just don't. I get I get too much of the, I gotta have that. So, but that is very good advice. is sort of look at it at the long run. Um, right now, just the other day, I sent off a watch to get serviced, and it was one that I got, and this rarely happens. Um, when I got it, it wasn't working quite right. And so I thought, no, I'll get to it. Maybe it'll fix itself because it hasn't been wound or something. But it needed something, so I finally sent it off. And so that advice is that you got to have some kind of service, or if something happens to it. But here's the problem. The same thing was true when I used to fly. This guy and I owned an airplane together, and one of the things you have to do if you have an airplane is that they have what's called an annual. And an annual is when you have to have your engine literally overhauled once a year. And so what we had set up an account, and every month we'd put something into our annual, what was called the annual account. And so when it came time to have the annual done, we would have the money for it. And we figured that roughly every time we flew, uh, every month, it would cost us $500 whether we flew or not. So it was like, that's another expensive hobby, by the way. So anyway, Al, if I buy another watch, my wife promised me a little box also, but it would be filled with filled with ashes. There you go. Or, or filled with vipers. The AliExpress 11/11 sale is coming up soon. You know, JGH, those things, that's something. Let me get my. Both of these watches, this one I made for my grandson, and this one I just wanted to have the world's cheapest tourbillon that, and I could make it. This was like about $150 for my tourbillon. It works great. And this is simply a big watch for my grandson with a 6498 clone in it. That I think is something. Let me, for those of you who haven't tried it yet, if you want to save some money, and this may sound sort of a paradox, if you want to save some money, do some watchmaking. Learn how to, there are a lot of videos. There's some very good videos for how to make your own watch out of spare parts. It's not that hard. You really only need a few things. You need a case, you need a movement, you need a dial, and you need hands, and a, a bracelet or a strap for it. That's it. And the tools you need a couple screwdrivers. I think the ones you need are red and purple. Those are color coded for the size you need, but that's it to get started. And it's a very satisfying thing to do, but more importantly, you'll learn about it. There are a lot of online courses on how to make your own watch, and you can just follow one of those. A lot of fun. But the big thing is, I think you'll understand more about the watches that you collect and learn how to really appreciate them. Yeah, yeah, Dominic. I, that the, you're right, Dominic. I got. I should. There's what I did when I was flying versus what I do as a watch collector aren't necessarily the same. When you fly, if you don't take good care of your airplane, you're gonna die. Put it that way. you're out over, 10,000 feet and your engine stops. You hope there's a place to land. With watches, you just get, maybe you get a rolling pin upside the head from a justifiably angry wife. What are some other things that we might advise for somebody beginning? Hey, by the way, let me just ask, how many of you have ever, sort of cobbled together your own watch just for the fun of it, not to, just, went out and got some, the AliExpress or eBay and got some cheap, parts and put your own watch together? John, look at perpetual watches. If I may, John, let me explain that. Usually, when people hear perpetual, they think of perpetual calendars. What John is talking about is a company in Hong Kong called Perpetual Watches, and you can get whatever you want. Um, Including tourbillons. I think it would be fun to contact the guy and say, "Hey, I'd like to put together a repertoire for us." But I'll tell you, yeah, there's some, you know, while you're saving for that Vacheron Constantin or Audemars Piguet or or FP Journe, but you need to get a fix. Go to Perpetual Watches in Hong Kong. They're great. One of the things too, the hands on my I have one Perpetual watches, and it's their regulator, and the hands on the regulator are blued. And there's a note. The guy who runs Perpetual, he says, we use there's a bluing process, or a lot of different bluing processes. Some are chemical, some are one thing or the other, but the true bluing comes from heat bluing, and this is what he does. So here you get this, some guy in Hong Kong making watches, and he does a good job. It's a lot of fun. There was this one guy that I know. It's really funny. Um, he had ordered a watch from Perpetual, and the guy at Perpetual Watches had got a batch of not so good movements from Siegel, I think. And so he wrote all of the people who had ordered a watch and said, "Look," he said, "I have a bad batch of movements that I got, and so it's gonna take me a little longer. But if you want, you can either just wait for it, or I can refund your money." Well, this guy that I knew said, "Well, yeah, he could use a refund." So he got a refund. So then later on, he went back to the guy and he said, "Oh, hey, did you get the movements and everything and the watch already?" And the guy said, "Yeah, yeah, I got them, but I'm not going to give you one because he wanted a refund." It's so funny. I don't know. It's just one of the crazy things that happen. Yeah, retired 1811. Yeah, that sounds about right for your expensive watches. Uh, I had my Parmigiani Colpa. That thing was in bad shape, and I sent it in, and it cost me about around 1,100 for that. So not cheap. Um, yeah, Roger Dubuis, they're they are expensive to fix. Right now, Larique is working with a couple of different watchmakers that were hoping that rather than sending them back to Switzerland to be serviced at Agenor, and they're not crazy about servicing watches. I mean, it's just usually not something that's done by you don't go back to that origin, but they do it because that's where we get all of our movements from. But now I thought, with all of this, this crazy stuff going on with the tariffs and everything, that we could probably use one in the U.S. And there are two different ones. One, I just sent a watch off for them to take a look at it, and the other one, we're waiting to hear from them. We sent them some information, so that's another way. And I think that there's like the certified, I guess, are the ones that are sort of owned by the company that sells the watches. Roger Dubuis is a good example. So you have those, and you have ones who are regular watchmakers. So that might be something you can consider. As for building a watch, I have a different take on that. I just bought a NH34 to dismantle to better understand the work. Yeah, that's another thing you can do. I tell you, there was they had this online course that I took, and I did it with I think they had a Salida. You could either have an ETA or a Salida, and the Salida at 200, I think, or the 210, hand wound. I got to tell you, it was a great experience going through, and I learned a lot. But I could never get that the Salida 210 back together again. One of the things you'll find out if you get into that, there are these magic places like black holes that will eat different parts of your watch, no matter what you do. So that was one thing. The other one I had was the Horological Society of New York's got a really good weekend one, and we took apart a 6498 and put it back together. The thing about the 6498 over the Salida was the size. Those 6498s are nice big ones, and the Salida is a little bitty one, or God forbid something like the 7001 ETA. Those are like little bitty. So if you want to do it, to play around with it, get a big one. A pocket watch would even be better for that. Hi, JC. How you doing? I saw a regulator by Traska, is that right? That was at the watch windup that a YouTuber had reviewed on a nice looking. Yeah. My JLC Master Compressor Geographic, $900 for service. Yeah. Yeah, JLC, Jaeger-LeCoultre is another one that's a compressor, master compressor. That's the geophysics line of watches are my favorite from Jaeger-LeCoultre. Yeah, retired 1811 and Dominic. That was my experience too. The ones that I had done by FP Journe in Miami, the ones that and also my Parmigiani in Miami, they were expensive, but boy did they do a good job. Also, too, my Chanel, Monsieur Chanel. Now, what they did, it was even better because it was under warranty, and Fernando and I went down. We went to the boutique in New York City with a watch. Man, I tell you, you really get treated very nicely. And they took the watch, they took all the information on it, and they sent it back to Switzerland. and they did the fix back there. In fact, I think they added some some new parts to it, but boy, they did a good job. So I think, that's the thing that you want to do is you want to find not only an affordable watchmaker, but you need to find one that is competent. And usually, I won't say this 100% of the time because I do know some people who have sent it back to the approved uh, watch service and didn't work out too well. Okay. All right. You get your O-rings on your stems changed every time you get a that sounds like a good idea for keeping the water out. Yeah, 4 months. Also, that's a good point, Dominic. 4 months isn't bad. My AP ROO, actually, that'd be Royal Oak overseas, right? Or Royal Oak, what is he? Oh, it's not overseas. It's offshore. Right. 1600. That sounds about right too. What kind of job did they do, JC, on your Royal Oak? Oh, that's too bad. Yeah. Is Girard-Perregaux owned by um Louis Vuitton? I thought Girard-Perregaux was independent now. I could be wrong about that. Or they could be they're all owned by somebody, but I thought that Caring Group used to own a couple things, but they sold them and they're independent now. Timothy, the watchmaker Oris authorized factory service. My 2015 Oris 635 ETA cost $600 to replace the barrel bridge, gaskets, everything. Takes 6 months. That's like getting a new watch almost, it sounds like, Timothy. That APs are fragile. You know, some time ago, this was sort of funny. Most guys, I think, sooner or later, collecting watches, you're going to run into Archie. Archie's this character. Early on, years ago, when I was starting off serious watch collection, Archie had some great stuff. He wasn't just goofing off, but later on, it sort of something else happened. But I remember one time he had sent a watch into Audemars Piguet, and he got it back, and they had all of these other charges on it. Now he was livid, and he, of course, Archie being Archie, he threw really had a tantrum over it. But in watching it, it sounded like they found some things that weren't that needed fixing, and so they fixed it and they charged him for it. Um, I don't know. There's something I shouldn't. I have a soft spot for Audemars Piguet, and I don't know why, but I do. So I there's something about him I've always liked. Except the one that I bought wasn't. I didn't have that for very long, but most of them. If I ever got an Audemars Piguet, I'd get the most simple Royal Oak, the original one. No muss, no fuss. Just that would be the one I'd get. I tend to like those a lot. The chronograph function. That would be one of the things. I'm not crazy about chronographs, um, but I suppose that they are complicated. Um, Man, the Agin graph. If I had a chronograph that I'd really like to get, it'd be Agin graph. I doubt there's a chance that our friends at Agin are going to give us a break on one of those. They're too popular. Hi, Caesar. How you doing, man? 911. Okay. The Chanel J12. The Chanel J12, I like that a lot too. But only the newer ones that have essentially what they have is they have a Tudor movement in them that's done by a company that is co-owned with Chanel and Tudor called Kinesi. And they have their own special place. But that I think is what I would like is something I'd like to see something out of Chanel with a little different design. That J12 is okay, but I'd like to see for men's design. They got a lot of different women's designs in their watches, which sort of makes sense. Uh-oh, frying pan time, huh? Oh, you're always hey, busy times. How you doing? I'm planning on moving into high horology with my next pushes, but I can't make up my mind between several watches. Any advice on how to make the decision? Any decision, not only with high horology, there's two things you have to look at. Busy times. Spend all the time you need to find out about it. Knowledge is the number one thing. Number two, you got to look at the ones that are in reasonable for your own financial investment on it. Those two things. Spend a lot of time. You'll get the right watch. Okie doke. Oh, you're 58 today. Happy birthday, Rancher. Damon, Chanel 12 model H29 has an AP move. Yeah, some of the older ones do. You're right. Okay. All right, guys, listen, this afternoon, that might be a good topic, the one that the busy, what they call busy times brought up. What would be a really good high horology for getting into high horology? What would be a good first step? And so let's talk about that at 4 o'clock. Okay. Anyway, guys, again, happy birthday to the rancher. I knew he was going to be born near Halloween, so that's a good thing. Anyway, guys, take care. Have a great day, and I'll see you later. By the way, remember tonight we in the United States, it's already been done in Europe. We move our watches back an hour. This watch does it automatically. Well, it automatically with a pusher. See you at 4, okay? Take care.